Okay, so welcome. Be snacking while you're working. Today we're gonna learn just a little project based on printmaking. So if you do teach tab, some of you I know teach tab, some of you don't. Teaching artistic behavior is where you have centers, and your students come in and they choose their center, whatever is open to them already. So you could have a drawing center, a painting center, a printmaking center. So they come in, they choose their center, or they might move around. So this could be an activity you introduce one day and then allow at the printmaking center, or it could be something for all of your students. And again, we have got, so the materials you should have in front of you, just a little piece of paper because we don't have covered tables here, but a little piece of paper just so that you can draw on top of that and not worry about getting stuff on the table. You should have a piece of sandpaper and a piece of fabric, and then we've got our protected ironing board and an iron. If you need more, we've got more of everything. Yeah, so this activity, this printmaking lesson is maybe not geared towards the Albrecht Dürer kind of printmaking. He used more precise etchings, right? And with sandpaper, it's gonna look like this. It's not gonna be super precise, but it can be interesting. But it also, with the sandpaper, you can see I did do two versions. So you can use it like a printing plate, or you could use it like a monotype plate where you could do one and then you could add more, and then you could do it on the same piece of paper or piece of fabric. So, and this lesson could also be used, it can also be used for younger kids, it could be used for older kids, it could be adapted for adult students, it could be used for, oh, sorry, also crayons. You need a collection of crayons in your repertoire. It can be used, it can be elaborated into just a piece of fabric. You could then sew with a piece of fabric. You could do it on a piece of fabric that might get used for something else, like a bag or a t-shirt, which might entice your older students, maybe middle school or high school age. So what you're going to do, and I don't have a piece of paper, so I'm going to protect it with newspaper. And if someone asks at the beginning, you will destroy these crayons. So, but don't worry about it, because the sandpaper obviously is going to wreck everything that it touches. So you can preemptively tear off some paper for your kids, or I assume you would have big boxes of crayons. But you're just gonna kind of cover your surface. And what I've done with my students in the past is encourage them to cover at least 3/4 of your paper. Like you can see with mine, I didn't cover the whole, but I left some white space, and I've got a nice frame around my picture. But you can cover it all. You just don't want mostly white space. You want to make sure that you're involving the aspects of composition, and you're talking about color, and so this is still something that you're asking your students to remember everything that they've learned beforehand, and maybe draw something that's more interesting. You could do something, you could depict something. When I'm doing demos, I tend to just do arbitrary colors or shapes. So here you go. We've got crayons out.
How much do you have to fill in? Like, should you be pressing like as hard as you can?
Good question. So what we want to do is you want to press, you can kind of see how I'm doing this. You want to press relatively hard, and it is kind of sanding down your crayon a little bit. But you want to and after a certain point, you'll kind of know when you're looking at your sandpaper, you will know when it's like totally saturated. Like there's not going to be any more wax on there, because all of the grit on the sandpaper is
like preventing any more from actually getting on.
You're kind of filling in all the space, so it's not accepting any more of the crayon. Does that make sense? Also 60 grit is the best for this, just because when you get the lighter grit you've got, the less it'll take of the crayon. Yeah. So the more grit, the more color you'll have on your end print. Okay. Are there other questions? Other suggestions? Anything else? Okay. So
have you tried to do the color shows up really well. Does it matter using any certain brand of crayon?
No, it's just you just need the wax. The colored wax is what's going to transfer onto your item. This also works on paper. Did I mention that before? So you could do it on paper and just have it be. You could totally do without the fabric if you don't have the fabric. And this is just muslin. You can, I just tend to go as simple as I possibly can. Okay, so I could probably fill this in more, but and then on your, actually you can pass that around. That is a used sandpaper. I actually used it twice. So I reapplied the crayon. Make sure my iron's on. And then you can do this straight onto the table. You just want to protect your table with newspaper because you might be able to see the wax does go through the fabric, which is a good sign because you know that it's seeping into the fiber, so you can kind of see some splotching there. Also, if your kids complain about wrinkly fabric, it's getting ironed. So don't allow them to worry about that. So you're going to place, can you see over there? Mm-hmm. You're going to place your fabric down. You're going to make sure it's nice and clean. There's no crumbs on it or anything else like that. And then you're going to lay your sandpaper face down. And you don't need anything in between your sandpaper and your iron because it's just paper. You'll start to see, you'll be able to tell. If you want to stand up and come watch what happens to the sandpaper, you'll be able to see. So what you want to do with your hot iron, you just 10-15 seconds. It really doesn't take much more than that. So you can just, and you don't need to lift at all.
Does it matter the temperature of the iron? If you
I usually just put it on the temperature of the fabric that you're using.
Okay.
Yeah.
Does the wax ever seep out the edge and get on the iron?
Not usually. It might be a smart idea to kind of give your students a border on your sandpaper. But if you're super worried about it, you can put another piece of newsprint or something else in between your sandpaper.
But you do need water to make it steam.
You don't necessarily. It's just about the heat usually. So this iron has water in it, but you don't need it. Yeah, so you can save. Okay, so you can see that your sandpaper is missing wax, right? It's clearly come off of there, and then you can see it's pretty clearly come off onto fabric.
Cool. I like how it makes a square shape.
Yeah, it kind of
letterpressed or something.
Yeah, you can kind of the little imprint. So ready to go. Good work. And then you can come up and use the iron when you are ready, when you feel ready. And then maybe as your students are doing this, you might want to designate someone or an aide or have yourself say, I'm going to be at the iron. I will be manning the iron. If you need help, bring your pieces to me and I will help you out. Or, you know what I mean? You kind of want your ironing stations kind of set apart from wherever you're working.
Can you trust the kids to use the iron themselves?
It depends on the age, kind of up to you.
Elementary.
Yeah.
Can
Elementary
farmers-
school, you might not want to,
No.
yeah.
You might not want to.
Yeah,
Unless you want.
probably not.
Jesse and.
And Christian, to readdress your detail issue, if you want to layer on top of each other, like if you want to layer as much as you can and then maybe layer on top of that, you can do that. Or if you want to use 2 pieces of sandpaper,
I'm scratching it.
if you want to allow that in your classroom, you're going to have to be prepared with extra sandpaper. But you could do a first layer as if you were doing a lithograph or something like that, where you could do a first run, a second run, a third run. You just have to be precise about your first one being the most simplistic, and then doing slightly more detail on the second one, laying that on top, doing slightly more detail with the third. If you want to do that,
Cool.
you could get slightly more detailed. But there is kind of a limit with how splotchy the wax gets. But you never know. There could be different parts of the sand that grip the wax. And I don't know if any of you noticed on these samples, they kind of have a stiff feeling to them. The wax in the crayon will kind of seep through and into the fabric. So, which is good. That means your image is solid, but it will kind of be there forever. It will kind of wear after time, but it'll, like a batik, it'll kind of still have the wax in it, unless you heat it. So you probably, if you're doing this on a shirt or a bag, don't put it in the dryer. So, good advice.
Wax.
Yeah, you get wax all over
Oh
your dryer.
dear, yeah. Good advice.
Are you just going for colors, Andrea, or are you kind of
Abstract.
okay? Wondering if you're going for like a merry-go-round or a beach umbrella or something.
Yes.
Yes.
Whatever you see.
Courtney's getting a little blend on.
Oh.
Yeah.
Wow.
What?
Courtney, you're making us all look bad.
Okay. And we've got
No,
Alex
that
doing
does look
some
Doing my name.
doing some lettering. Okay. If
Mirror
you-
image, of course.
Right, mirror image. If you want to, you're gonna have to kind of lay that. You might, if you're teaching your kids how to do a mirror image, you might do it on a thin piece of paper, just on printer paper. A name, fold it in half, and then see how it looks on both sides. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
So that you can kind of say, okay, here's what it looks from this side. That's the way you want to draw it on your sandpaper.
Yeah.
Or you can see the image relatively okay on both sides. You can also, if they're too young but they want to still have their name on there, just have them do it straight out. And then you can see it from the opposite side.
Well, I also know that math classes sometimes have things called mirrors that show things
Symmetry.
symmetrically, so you can trace them.
Mm-hmm.
So you can use that if they were like too small to be able to
True.
do it on their own.
True. It could be this lesson could totally be tied to a math lesson, or you could work hand in hand with the math teacher at your school, and try and have, you could do grid work, or you could do, graphs, and have
Oh, that's fun.
have them kind of
Did you ever do that?
use that. If they want to do mirror images, they can do that.
Do you connect this lesson to anything particular in art history?
Well, you can tie it to printmaking, the process. So that's what I like to do, is kind of tie it to the printmakers of old, and kind of describe what their process was. Because yes, they had extremely detailed images, which we can't achieve with the sandpaper, but the process itself and etching, you can talk about etching, you can talk about having a plate and having it go repeatedly onto different surfaces and have it look the same every time, right? So your sandpaper is essentially your plate in your printmaking, and you can go over and over and over until that sandpaper wears through, and you can iron it over and over again.
Like a quilt.
I think it's like that. They look kind of like pointillism.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I think it's
They can
like
also be tied to when I did it in elementary school, they tied it to kind of a mosaic because that's what we were doing. We were creating one big image with our images. So you could do mosaics, you could do pointillism, you could do lithography, you could do intaglio prints, you could do wood blocks, you could do, it ties to pretty much every aspect of printmaking, but can definitely be tied to other forms of artwork as well.
Yeah.
And Impressionism too, a little bit, because you can't, like Christian was asking, you can't exactly get precise detail, right? So you can kind of get the idea of an image. Yeah, and really, this is kind of fun too for students because they do get to kind of just like grind on those crayons like they do all of your markers and all of your pens, and they pound, right? So this is kind of a good activity for them to kind of get some of that out. They can kind of grind their crayons down onto that sandpaper. You ready? Okay, go for it. Let's put some extra paper down here. You got it?
See, there's some right there. I think that's gonna cause a problem.
Let's put another here. Let's put a piece of paper on. Okay, you can.
I got some of the iron. That was really close.
Did it get some on the iron?
Just the ones on
Okay, we'll clean it up. You might want to do it a little bit longer with extra paper in between. You might have to do a little bit longer than 10 or 15 minutes. Or 10 or 15 seconds.
Yeah,
Sorry.
it's meant to. Don't worry about it.
I think Madeline's using her mic. Right there. Yeah, it's a little harder to do with the newspaper in between because you can't really see what's happening to the back of the sandpaper. But you can
Little
check.
bit left.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah, this is pretty fun for your older kids or maybe your after school kids too. If they want to bring in their own, that's good. If they want to bring in their own something to print on, they can do that. If they want to bring in a canvas bag or an old T-shirt or something. There we
That's
go.
a good idea.
Look at that.
Oh, that looks good.
Oh.
Cool.
Nice.
Good job.
And then with these little pieces of muslin, super easy. You can just write on it with crayon directly if you want to write your name on it. Alex, we won't have any problem figuring out who's whose. But you can also just write with a pencil or a marker or whatever. Muslin is pretty, you can write on it with anything.
I don't like it.
That's frightening.
It's supposed to be. I had to represent the men. And Alex.
Shark. Lovely.
It's a shark.
Okay, I'm ready to.
Okay, looks good. Whoa, look at this. It's off of yours.
It was intense.
Beauteous. Do you want to do it, Laura, or do you want me to?
It's like a egg.
It's like
Easter's
an
coming
egg.
up.
It's kind of like an egg. Oops.
Oh, Easter. Yeah, this is a pretty easy lesson too for if you need one thing for everybody to do. You can give them each the same kind of thing to do, but they can also use multiple pieces of sandpaper or print it multiple times. They can each kind of take it in their own direction if they want, but you can pretty easily make this succinct and simple for a large group if necessary.
Totally. That's really dark.
Yeah, this is a good summer camp.
Yeah.
What if, do I need to do,
If you want, you can kind of check and then lay it back down. Sorry, what was your question, Kyle?
does it need to be like, I feel like I maybe haven't put mine on hard enough. I need to do more.
See, this is all hot. I bet you could even get more off of it.
Daddy. Oh, but how am I gonna get it back?
That was a good thing.
How'd you feel?
Well, you know.
Yeah, I just got a point.
That's
But I can
nice. Great.
But I can reapply and
Yeah.
Oh.
You could do
a
another
new
one.
piece of
There's
glass.
another piece of
Mhm.
one right
Totally.
there.
Very cool.
It's gonna be our
I think I'm ready.
bottoms.
Okay. Right.
That's true, you could kind of make it like
Yeah, you do want to make sure you keep your eye on the ironing station, because if you do have an ironing board like this, you're going to want to shift this around, because you'll see the newspaper on the ironing board is getting kind of soaked through with the wax.
this is really cool.
So you're going to want to kind of shift that newspaper around.
Okay, so.
Kind of fun to do different sizes of sandpaper, or maybe little tiles of sandpaper, or anything else.
Oh, that looks cool when you blend them.
I know that
Oh, that's
one.
sweet.
How
Yeah.
does it turn out neat?
Wait and see.
Yeah, that turned out neat.
Is that long? How much longer?
You just want to make sure you
Starts
see the
getting-
wax coming through the paper, yeah. But you want to do it long enough that you're sure it's got.
I like it.
Sorry, that you've got the color going all the way through the muslin.
Do you think
Oh,
that's
that's pretty
long
good.
enough?
Yeah, because you covered the whole
Yeah, I
surface,
did.
right? Yeah, that's
That?
good. Yeah, that's great. The unveiling's kind of cool.
Yeah.
The students get kind of excited
It's
about it.
blending now.
Cool. A lovely little tree.
That's cool.
I think I want to color it all.
Go for it.
Oh, it got like a
You do
line.
like a blue or something.
Yeah, I like it.
Oh, from the, oh, interesting. Oh, maybe from,
Was it from the paper?
Mine kind of did too. There was a crease or
Yeah, mine's
something.
Yeah,
Oh,
crease
your sandpaper was a little bit folded. Do you see that right there? Or is that not from the sandpaper?
it might be, you might have to watch out for, how your newspaper is lined
Oh.
out. It might
Is
have
it
been from
like
the
that?
newspaper. Yeah, because it doesn't seem to be through here.
This reminds me of the
What's that?
90s kind of a,
Yeah.
bedspread or something.
Yeah,
Lots of geometric, bright shapes.
that's what came out of your brain.
Those are the good
That's
old
looking
days.
cool, Courtney.
I'm gonna blend them this time.
Oh, you're gonna blend them in your circles? Very cool. Here's an extra, piece of muslin for you.
I kind of like the line through it.
Gonna make some more earthy. Yeah, so it's kind of cool that you can reuse the sandpaper. You can kind of have them do a
Yeah.
first glance, you know, and then have them go back. maybe go up to your self-assessment wall. With tab, we have a wall up on one near the front of the classroom where you can kind of pin up your work, take a step back, and see, okay, do I like this? Do I not? What does it need? What should I try next time? If you want to alter it, then you can kind of go back and change it. If you want to do a totally new one, you can do that. But it's kind of a nice thing where you can take your piece of fabric up to the assessment wall, pin it up, take a look at it, and then come back and do another one, because the sandpaper you can use over and over again.
That's cool. I really like that aspect of planning adaptation.
Okay.
Okay. You got some wax there on the back of it?
Oh yeah.
It's, you can, put this piece over the back of your, there you go. And if you want, you can lift, if you want to check, you can lift the whole fabric up. If you want to check and make sure that it's getting all the way through. But if you've got it on there long enough, it should go all the way through.
For the seconds long enough.
Yeah.
I like that.
One more cover.
There you go. There you go.
Wonderful.
Feel
Little cubist. Good. Whoa, look at how deep it was on the back.
whoa.
Wow.
Wow.
Is it because you did it really dark?
Let me write
I
this
mean,
down.
you-
It kind of, look at that, it kind of like blended really cool through the other side.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's an idea to try too. Like when you try this at home or when you try this with your students, you might try it on paper because it might do something different. Because here on the opposite side of the fabric, and even there a little bit on his muslin, you can see that the colors really blended through. I'm excited to see what this looks like. Let's see if that
See if it turns out.
really, really blends.
Can I make another one?
Yeah, totally.
So how do I do this?
Okay, so your fabric is going down first.
Have some
problems on it. Okay. Let's put this down here. Your fabric down first. You go, Kim.
Oh, I was just
Oh.
gonna do
Okay,
another
cool.
this on this.
You can do whatever you want.
Thank
Then
you.
you can put it-
And then face down, sandpaper down onto your muslin, whichever direction you want.
It doesn't matter that there's that.
That might actually be the line that's happening with the,
You can iron
with the
that
other
out
ones.
before you put it
Yeah,
down.
true.
Yeah, do that.
Where's the line? So, yeah.
So there's a little crease in the muslin here.
Mm.
There you go. A little bit there. A little bit there. Oh well. Yeah.
So I put this down?
Mm-hmm. And then you can put a piece down on top of the paper if you've got little crayon crummies on the back of your sandpaper to protect your iron. You want to put down another piece of paper there. Yeah. And so then, yeah. So you will probably want 20, 25 seconds. With the more paper you have in between your sandpaper and your iron, just do 5 or 10 seconds more. You should be good.
You said you can wash these?
You can probably wash them. I would be careful about washing them, but definitely don't dry them. Because otherwise you're adding more heat to that wax and it's probably going to get a little crazy.
Is that probably good enough?
yeah, you can kind of check and see where you're at. I would maybe do a little more. Ooh, Lori, that's getting nice.
Yeah, that's really.
You're adding more this time, Kelly?
Huh?
You're adding more this time?
We'll see how it turns out.
Okay. Should be enough, right?
Yeah.
Let's see it. The unveiling.
Whoa!
Cool.
Very cool.
Nice.
That looks super cool.
Wow.
It looks cool for both sides too. Wow, that's cool. I like it. Seamless.
Good for you.
That's more violent.
Let's,
I'm gonna do mine.
we'll give you some new newspaper here. Do you want one in between your, so you're gonna lay your fabric down? Yeah, there you go, face down. And then you can just put that on top.
Perfect.
Any other questions before we wrap up?
No, this
No?
is fun.
It's good. It's kind of a fun little activity. It's kind of something really simple, but really individual too for your students.
Mm-hmm. It's therapeutic scratching.
I know, it kind of is a satisfying feeling to be grinding a crayon down so fast.
Think it's done?
I'd give it a little more time. I'm so proud of my little right? It's kind of cool. You kind of have your own little
Yeah.
piece.
It's ready?
Yeah, sure. Lift up here. There you go.
How do you do it?
Just kind of, you can kind of pick up your one corner and kind of peel it up like a sticker. Peel it up on one corner. It shouldn't stick too much.
Here's the kind of Vincent Van Gogh. Vincent Van Gogh style shirt.
No wonder he was asking you about detail.
Yeah, I wanted to
To
do
get
that.
that shirt in there. It's pretty good.
Cool. It's very light.